So what I want to talk a little bit about today is what authentication is. So there are a couple of things, right? There's two-factor authentication, there's multi-factor authentication. How does this fit in? And why is it that it's such a big deal now, right? Especially when we talk about phishing attempts, which is a little bit, which was the driver for a lot of this, right? Why are we talking about this now and not like 10 years ago? And it really comes down to the evolution of technology and moving into the cloud. That has been a huge driver for reweighing what's valuable for bad actors. Should I attack them with a virus, or is there an easier way? And it turns out there is a lot. It is incredibly easy to get people in a phishing attempt versus a virus, right? Versus um, trying to install software and have it send information back to, one of their servers they control and then grab that information. It turns out it's incredibly easy. And that's thanks in large part to just the way that technology has evolved. And cloud computing is the main driver. That's what the bad actors are leveraging. Just as we leverage the features from a business impact, right? The bad actors are leveraging for their business. Um, but if we step back, let's say 10 years ago, and we talk about phishing attempts, not viruses or other malware, but just phishing attempts. You know, in large part, it really was about trying to get people, right, usually in an email, to provide personal information, not network information. So, for example, they might say, okay, what's your name? What's your social security number? Right, right. My dad needs help. He needs a lot of money. Or it could be something fake, like, hey, this is your boss. We have some bank account records that are incorrect. Please provide your username, your password, maybe to a bank, or get your social security number, your address. And the idea there for the bad actors where they were going to try and use that to order things off the internet using a credit card or debit card that someone provided, potentially fill out W-2 forms, maybe try and log into a bank account. But what wouldn't has been very successful for those bad actors to ask at that time is, what's your network logging information to the business, right? Because all the, when we really think about it, 7 years ago, or 95% of businesses didn't do and didn't hold a lot of infrastructure in the cloud. It was too expensive. It didn't make sense at that time. Um, it really was all on premise, right? So if you think about the data centers, the servers, the networking equipment, right, VPN technology, all of that is encompassed right within the security perimeter of a company, which largely was on premise, right, physically on prem, and the only way to connect to it was through some type of security means. And from a security posture standpoint, you really had to worry about right potential hackers coming in. But they usually have to be fairly sophisticated, and you worked on hardening some of that technology. And that hasn't changed today. What has, right? But thinking about that for a moment, if you or I, as the end user, were working for a company and we provided that data to the bad actor, like our login, username, password, they'd have to, usually have a computer, or they'd have to have some means of getting onto the company's network. And that limiting factor alone is why typically from a phishing attempt that wasn't asked, right? What's your username and password to get on your email? Well, what does it matter? In order to access it, you'd have to have a company computer, or you'd have to have an extra VPN token. And that was very prohibitive. So we're going to jump now back into really where we're at today, right? 7 years of development, right? We've heard of Azure, we've heard of AWS Cloud, S2 computing, right? We've heard of Google Cloud. And what has changed is that instead of these infrastructure for a company being localized on-prem, now it's kind of in the cloud, right? In the cloud means that you can just like visually think about, like, okay, you've got a bunch of servers and computers that host the company information, and IP. We're going to take that and just like raise it up and toss it in the cloud. That is kind of what's happening. Is that we're taking a lot of the services that were very expensive to maintain, wasn't very equitable to keep it on-prem, and now we're going to take those services and we're going to host them on large computers, right? That the company doesn't own, they don't have to maintain, so it's very cheap. right? But now think about how you access that information. So a really big target for phishing attempts is Microsoft Office 365. If that's not number one, it's got to be number two, um, right? So prior, you'd log into your computer, it would remote into the company, and you had a very secure tunnel. Right? Security perimeter was very easy to identify. But now, that's not quite what happens. Now you log into your computer, and Office 365 is all managed in the cloud. The permissions, what you can and can't do, is governed by settings that your security team would is responsible for, and create policies to help enforce those regulations. But all those settings, they're not logging into a computer on-prem. They're not walking into work and having to do it. They're at home just like you are remotely, and they log into their admin console in Microsoft Office 365, and they're changing those settings there. But that system is in the cloud too. So that means the huge benefit today is I don't even need my business computer. I can use a personal computer as long as the company has authorized me to do so. And I can use my personal computer to also log in, right? But those credentials now are really, really important. Before, technology, that just the limitations of what we could do, the bad actors weren't able to kind of get into the company's data infrastructure. But now they don't have that challenge anymore because now it's quote unquote in the cloud. So there are obviously a lot of ways to facilitate and to drive some of that security. But as we're transitioning, as companies are adopting this technology, there's a lot of learning curves. Then there's a lot of tools still developed. It's not a mature model yet. It really isn't. And what that means is between this huge transition, companies are finding that if they don't have multi-factor authentication, if they don't take a look at the security posture of the software on the endpoints, the transmission, the communication, what happens is it's much easier now for bad actors to get your credentials. So before, they were trying to get little information about you, but now with a username and password, if they're able to log in, they can access Office 365. That's where you have all your emails. And if you think your emails are not important, you're not to sound mean, but you're incredibly ignorant. And you couldn't be more wrong than you possibly could be. Guarantee you've got personal information in your email. Guarantee you have information about other people in your email. Guarantee you're probably referencing to a password or access to a program you may not want everyone to know. Even an email that people use to send scam and phishing stuff or to send junk mail, right? Some people used to have like a junk mail, which they knew that alone is still worthy for a bad actor. It may not be as valuable as the primary one, but just guarantee you that if you use an email even once a week, you absolutely have valuable things in there. If you don't think about it, doesn't mean that you don't. So that's basically what it is. Is now we have bad actors who are able to target these users, especially if they work for a company, and ask them for their credentials, right? So what typically happens today is um, you have bad actors that will send a phishing email. It'll say something like, "Hey, you forgot to, complete your sign in," or "Hey, there's a file for you to share." Or for you to access. I've seen a bunch of them in the real world where it's, hey, please download the file. You requested this sooner or later. And then they click on the link, right? It's some type of that requires person to use. And the crafty thing about this, it's no longer necessarily, it's not using the same familiarity that we've come to expect. It's not the Prince of Nigeria asking us for money. It's not, hey, this has to be done tomorrow, right? It's not as urgent as it seems. And so the triggers to identify what's phishing aren't as obvious, right? So business, enterprise have really worked together to try and figure how to help secure some of this, because a lot of the emails that people are getting look very legitimate. And here's the difference. When they provide their credentials because they say, oh yeah, I know who this person is, and they provide their username and password, the bad actors are not able to get into that person's inbox. They're able to download the person's emails. They're able to download their contacts. If you have special notes in your Outlook, they're able to download that. If you're using Office 365, like for example, Yammer, Power BI, OneDrive, obviously all the office documents that you may have, OneNote, right? And it goes on and on. There's like 30 different tools. If you're using any of those, the bad actors now have the ability to download and to keep that. If the security of the company has not thoroughly been looked at and continuously vetted out, right? And I've seen that time and time again where companies don't have that, and it's a huge cost. And what happens is these bad actors get your credentials because a lot of companies don't have multi-factor authentication or two-factor, kind of the same thing, right? They don't have that enabled. And what happens is you provide those credentials thinking, oh, it's this, and you don't get a warning saying, ha ha, we tricked you. It just shows that it doesn't work. A lot of people ignore it. Or they reply to the email, say, hey, whatever you sent me doesn't work. And what happens is two different things, right? The bad actors are now going to start looking in your email, and they're going to do a couple of things. They're going to be looking for contacts that are important. They're going to be looking for executives. They're probably going to do a search for finance, payroll, IP, government, anything at all to do with money. So they're going to be looking for invoices, purchase orders. They're going to search common words like SAP, right? SuccessFactor, Onventus, Workday, anything that has to do with HR, that has to do with budget, because that's usually where the money is at. So that's the first thing they're going to do. And the second thing they're going to do if they're crafty is they're going to start downloading all of that content. So even if the security department is quick on their feet and they block that access within an hour or hopefully a couple of minutes at most, during that entire time, the bad actor is going to be downloading all that email. So if they have a good connection, and typically it's in the cloud, so it is, even if you block that access, now that person's learned who your contacts are. The second thing that they're going to do is they're going to typically try and fish other people. So it's not a one-stop shop. It's not, okay, haha, we got one person, here's their information. Now they're going to try and get other people. And I've seen some very crafty automated scripts where what they're going to do is, because they're in the user's inbox, they're going to grab that information and they're going to start replying to people. So they're going to look at their contacts, just like you have access to your email, they have access. And they're going to start replying to people and saying, oh, okay, I'm going to reply to these people at this company. And oh, I see that you're working with this external company. Let's see if we can get them. But they're not going to reply from their, bad actors' email, personal email. No, 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 no. They're going to use your email. That's a huge problem. They're going to use your email because people already know who you are. They trust you. If you send a document, they're going to open it. And that's exactly what we see time and time again. So it's not just about downloading email and getting you to fake something. They're going to spread it around to try and get into more people's inboxes. So they're going to, if they get into your inbox, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to look at who your contacts are, right? After downloading all your stuff, they're going to look at who your contacts are, and they're going to send another 500 emails, 1,000 emails, 12,000 emails. Whatever your contacts are, that's what they're going to do. And if they're having a little extra fun, what they're going to do is not only try and fish other people, so they have credentials and they're basically credentialing a hash farm, right, where they're trying to get as many people to sign in and then download their contact. But what they're going to also do if they want to have a little extra fun is they're going to reply as if they're you. I've seen that time and time again. So you get these bad actors, and someone will say, "Hey, by the way, did you send this file to me? I don't know what this is." And I've seen the bad actors go, "Yeah, absolutely, man. Go ahead and open it." And that's what people do, and then they get phished, right? They provide their credentials because it's so easy. It's now they're working off other people's, right? They're assuming their digital identity, and people associate, well, if I know this person, if I know Daniel, he just said open it, I'm going to open it. And then guess what happens? Boom, the second person gets phished. And before you say to yourself, if you're in this video long enough and you say, nah, come on, Daniel, um, they're pretty obvious, right? It's fairly easy to see. It's fairly obvious. It's easy to spot. I can tell you that they're becoming more and more sophisticated, and they're copying companies' entire look, entire feel, down to the font size, down to the terms of service and privacy that you see on some pages. They're adding that link there too. And so the average user isn't able to now distinguish between your company's login or Microsoft's login for Office 365 and your company's. Um, and you might say, well, okay, I got it, dandy. but we'll just train them to look at our URL, right? If my company is abc.office365.com, we'll just make sure that we train everyone that if it doesn't say abc, right, .office.com, no one logs in. Great. But you would still be phished, guaranteed, especially if you have a lot of users, because here's what will happen. And I've heard about this too. Bad actors are registering domains that look very, very similar to ABC. And then users aren't, if they're not paying attention and reading it every single time and not tired, right? It's not a, Monday afternoon and they're tired, or a Friday and they're ready for the weekend. So even if they see it, they may just feel kind of lazy or tired. I've seen obc.office.com. So the difference between A and an O is that little dash there, right? Who would notice? obc.office.com. Or maybe they'll do OBC and then add a squiggly line, right? Something that's small, OBC dash, right? Things like that that aren't obvious at first unless you really, really look. So a lot of times these bad actors, if they're targeting a specific company, not a broadcast target phishing attempt, they'll register a domain very similar to the company's domain. And I've seen it, and this is not a US thing, guys. It's uh, global. I've seen it in Europe. I've seen it in Asia, companies that are hosted there, and they'll copy their entire domain and then just change something. They'll own that domain so that when users see email even coming from them or they're logging in, if they're not paying very close attention to the name, they're not able to even identify. And that's the new field. We are all playing in that security field for the most part because we are all now playing in the cloud. And because of that, it's incredibly cheap for companies to spin up, I'm sorry, for bad actors to spin up servers and target companies globally. It just doesn't take as much. Um, the companies like I mentioned earlier that are cloud providers, they've made it very easy to spin up, Windows, Windows environment and a database to spin up in matter of minutes to collect all these credentials and to start logging it in. And so that's where 17 minutes into this video now, we're coming back to why is multi-factor authentication? Why is two-factor authentication important, right? So here, to keep it simplified to some degree, here's really what happens. If they have your username and password, they're going to get into your account. But what if there was a third way that you had to get into account? Many of us are using that today. If you're using SMS messaging, if you are using biometrics, i.e., you're looking at eyes on your iPhone or Android, if you're using your fingerprint, all of those are really a third way that you're authenticating who you are. So, well, usually it's your first name and password. That's usually one method. So I'll be more clear. And your second method is usually your fingerprint or your eyes, right? A facial recognition. Or maybe if you have like an RSA ID card, right, that's got numbers that generate every once in a while. It's like you carry in a keychain. Some businesses have it. Or to log in via VPN. That's a second way of authenticating, right? And what you're really doing is you are doing a couple things. You're having the user provide a unique ID, typically, if it's a code generator that they have to put in that only works with a limited amount of time. And you're also kind of what I would like to call relocalizing access. A lot of times these multi-factor methods, right? Again, your eyes, your fingerprint, an ID, a code generator, right? We talked about security perimeter. It used to be on-prem. Now it's in the cloud. Great. But now you're kind of bringing that in and lassoing that control back to the company to some degree because only the company is issuing that extra authentication method, right? And so when someone logs in, they have to provide like the new code. Many times we all use our phones, right? And when we use our phones, we're going to log into something like this and a code gets sent to us, maybe from an app like Google or Microsoft Authenticator or Okta, and we pull that up and we can enter those numbers. So from a bad actor's perspective, If they have your username and password, reality is, who cares? If you have multi-factor authentication set up, who cares? It's not relevant to that business anymore because you still need that that second authentication factor, right? I'm not saying go out and give everyone your username and password. No, that's not what I'm saying because we're human and we're probably using that same username or that same password for like 10 dozen things we forgot we even signed up for. So that doesn't mean be careless. That doesn't mean be naive and provide it everywhere and go, oh, security set up MFA. Haha, I'm going to start clicking on things and downloading things. No, no, no. Come on. You guys and gals, just be smart. Um, I say that in love, but reality is I'm not far off the mark. There have been people who literally said, well, security enabled MFA, I have a token here. Um, what's the big deal now? I still click on things. And so um, that's typically how it works. When you log in, you need two things to really authenticate your digital identity. Now, there's a huge caveat to this, and that is it's not perfect. MFA can still be bypassed, believe it or not. So we want to go to MFA because it's better than not, and it keeps a lot of people out. But it's not foolproof because I've seen, so take for example, you provide your username and password in Office, and then let's say that you have a code generator, right? You open up your Microsoft Authenticator. See if I can find that, right? You open up your Microsoft Authenticator. I don't know if you can see that, right? You open up your Microsoft Authenticator and it generates a code and you provide it, right? So someone would say, well, how can that be bypassed? How could the bad actors know that code that is only active for like 15 seconds? Like, how would they know that? Well, for some people, it's simple. They're going to ask you. Just how they ask you for your password, they're going to ask you for your code. At some point, what's going to happen is someone's not going to pay attention. They're going to say, enter your username and password. And then when everyone starts doing MFA, what's going to happen is these crafty people, and I've seen some already, it's not ubiquitous, but they will soon, where it will literally say, the fake site will say, enter your username and password to get to this document. Someone's going to hit submit. And then the next thing that's going to come up is a window. It's going to come up and it's going to have, to continue to sign into Microsoft, please enter your MFA key. And guess what? People will do that. So we're not seeing that a lot today. That's why MFA is working pretty well, but it's not perfect. But some people will say, well, sure, no problem. I'll enter in my key and they'll do this. They'll hit authenticator and they go, oh, okay. And then they'll hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, enter. And they have just defeated MFA because now the bad actors have your username, your password, and your code. And before you think, yeah, but it's only live for, 10 seconds. Well, so what? We just talked about how easy it is to spin up servers. How incredibly easy is it to take the code and the information and log in within milliseconds to your account? Done. I mean, done. It's not hard to do that. And that's what these bad actors are doing. And that's what they're going to start doing once MFA really rolls out. And so the user training process, right, as we think about MFA, as we think about additional factors, the user is still, I hate to say it because I'm one of them, is still the weakest link. We still have to be careful. We still have to be vigilant. We can't just sit there and enter everything in and think it's all fine. Now, companies are now thinking, again, once it's in the cloud, it's a whole new dynamic. From a security posture standpoint, I mean, the security teams in every company today, I mean, are sweating. They are working hard, guarantee it. And if they're not, if they have Office, if they have systems in the cloud, and they're having an 8 to 5 job, and they're doing, they're doing their, they're using these cloud tools, and there's a lot of them out there, and you know they don't see any of this, or they've never heard of this, or maybe they're going, oh, it's smooth. I would be very, very careful. If I was on the security team, I'd start looking. I'd maybe get someone outside consultant and say, guys, help us. Let's make sure, because many companies have been phished and just don't know it. Um, I have seen partners, suppliers, contractors get phished and then they in turn get an email that gets sent to all of their contacts from other companies. So don't have to worry just about the security of your stuff. The company doesn't have to worry about their little on-prem that they have now, about their cloud, but now they got to worry about partners who are trusted that have worked with them for a long time getting phished. And when they get phished, they're going to send an email from that person that they know to another person. And guess what? Oh, I know who they are. Of course they sent me a document. Boom, boom, boom. Provide their credentials. So the user is still the weakest link. We all are still the weakest link. Technology is not going to make this foolproof until we can completely remove the user from the equation. And there's a way to do that to some degree. So that's for a whole different video. But I just wanted to kind of discuss through why multi-factor authentication is the next wave from a security standpoint, but it's not bee's knees. It's not the solution that's going to end all because the bad actors will, and to some degree, have caught up already. They're going to get access because no matter how much you train your users, you'll never be 100% training, which means 100% people know how to watch for a phish, which means no one will ever fall for a phish again. Guaranteed. You just won't be there. And it's not because users maybe aren't paying attention. You may have an everyone at your company is all on digital. They all know. Maybe you work for a security company and everyone there knows everything about phishing, and they've been educated, and they're very vigilant. But what happens when they're tired? What happens when they've had to deal with an outbreak or they're doing research on a new platform and they're distracted or they're tired or they're bouncing between meetings all day and someone asks them to log in? How alert, how vigilant would that person be? It's the human condition too. It's not just about mental power. It's, oh man, I am just right. It's like for me, oh man, it's Friday. I'm ready for the weekend. Oh, what the heck? Okay, fine. Let me hurry up, get this proposal done. Enter, send. Okay, here's my credentials. Send. Person may have been phished. I've seen it. I've heard about it. I've heard other companies talk about their security team being it. Um, being very stressed out from this environment that has been caused by moving to the cloud, and as a result of that, they're tired, they're fatigued, and that could happen to anyone, right? But my point is, if the security team who should know better still get phished, then perhaps it's not just common sense. Perhaps maybe it's a lot deeper, and I believe it is. Um, Lastly, I don't want to make this video too long. Um, I've heard of companies firing people if they fall for phishing, multiple times. Um, it sounds severe, and I think to myself, I mean, it is severe. Um, but a lot of these companies have a lot to lose. If they're hosting your personal data, um, whether it's government data, whether it's medical data, if they're working for a company and they work in the Treasury Department or they're part of the C-suite, um, they have been targeted many, many times. And because of that, um, if they provide their credentials, that exposure could allow an attacker to copy potentially millions, if not billions, of data points. Because if someone keeps their passwords in there, or if that person has a copy of their own W-2 or somebody else's because you transact through email, now the bad actors got it. And now they've got personal information. Um, so companies are getting very serious about this. But I will tell you, and I probably should start at the beginning, this is as much of a challenge on security, on technology, on rethinking how we orchestrate and keep control of the company information, as it is a challenge for the user. So something to think about is it is absolutely a balance of responsibility. It is completely shared here. It's a shared responsibility model. So the company has to do their due diligence, help educate, get their systems up and running, get some external testing done to assure that they are where they truly believe they are. And then on the flip side, let's train the user, let's educate the user. And I tell you what, my personal favorite, talk to your users. Have training sessions like this, right? Set up a meeting, say, hey, here's why this is important. Give them the why. Show them some of the exposure that maybe has happened with the company. Give them some value to go, geez, I didn't think it was that serious. Show them how important the information in their inbox, and they'll help be more vigilant, but it will never be 100%. All right, thanks for watching. I got another video coming up on some of the interesting ways I've seen phishing. I think they're always unique, right? People are very creative, so stick around for that, and thanks for watching. Oh, and I don't think anyone's going to watch the entire video, but let's say they do. If you end up getting to a point that you've seen some of this, please comment below. Tell me what you've thought about phishing. Tell me what you've seen. I'm always interested. Let's share and give other people, give them the opportunity to be maybe a bit more vigilant because people are crafty.